Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Geico 15-Minute Moto Show. I'm your host, Ralph Sheheen. You know, you can win a lot of races, but you're not going to get to the top step of the podium if you don't have the right mechanic spinning the wrenches for you. Joining us today, the legendary Jeremy Albrecht, who everybody calls J-Bone. J-Bone, how you doing today?
I'm doing for you.
I'm good. Hey, you know, how did that nickname come about?
Honestly, I don't have a good story for you. I was hanging out at Jeff Emmig's house. Benny Stevenson actually named Jeffro and J-Bone the same night. So we were just all hanging out, and I don't know, I guess I was kind of skinny, bony, came up with it that way, I guess. I don't know. No one really knows. It just stuck.
Well, it stuck.
Right?
It stuck for sure. And as far as I know, there's only one J-Bone. So you got that going for you.
Yeah.
What got you into the sport as a mechanic in motocross and supercross?
Well, I raced when I was younger, my brother and I both. And then my brother got a ride at DGY. Randy Lawrence was his mechanic. And then my brother ruptured a spleen at the first race. And then Randy ended up going to work for Doug Dubach while my brother was injured. And then my brother was back to race at the end of Supercross. Randy liked what he was doing and didn't want to come back. So I was racing, just starting to pay for it on my own, just turning pro. And my brother said, "Hey, you want to be a mechanic?" And I'm like, I guess the racing thing's not really paying the bills I'm starting to pay. So yeah, I gave it a shot. And then, yeah, it's pretty crazy where it all turned out here.
It doesn't hurt as much either, does it?
No, definitely. Yeah. And I didn't ride for like 2 years after stopping, because I felt like if I rode, then I wouldn't want to work on them. So I just focused for 2 years, just learning how to work on a bike really well. And I worked for, it's funny, my brother first, then Buddy Antonez. It ended up working for a lot of people that we all hung out with and knew, and, you know, Emig later on. So yeah, it's definitely was a better career path. I believe, I don't know. Maybe I could have made it. I'm not sure.
Well, a couple of championships to your credit. I think it worked out pretty good on the moto side for sure. You know, there's one mindset to being a really good racer. What's the mindset to being a really good mechanic?
Like everything, you just have to pay attention and be organized and realize you don't know everything. I mean, you have to have a team of people behind you. And I mean, really, the biggest thing I think to be a great mechanic in motorcycle racing, or probably good at anything, is being able to get along with people and have a good attitude no matter what's going on, because there's so much stress already. Things go wrong. How do you react? How long does it take you to fix it? If you're like in a hurry and you're stressed, you don't really fix it fast. You have to almost slow down to do it right. So yeah, I think really the hardest thing is to get along with people, really. I mean, we're all hanging out with our race teams more than our families. So really, it's trying to have a good attitude is what I think is good. And anything can, if you take it apart and pay attention, anything can go back together. But you have to do it right.
Easy for you to say, the guy who's a great mechanic. You know, we talk a lot about chemistry between mechanics and riders, and we usually talk about it from the rider perspective. But as a mechanic, what did you look for in the rider that you wanted to work with?
I mean, obviously you want the guy to be fast, but really, you know, really someone that would listen and someone that's willing to take advice makes it more fun. If it's someone that's kind of more stuck and stubborn and doesn't want to listen, it's not near as much fun. You want to have input in what they're doing and be helpful and, you know, tell them some lines on the track, and you're not wasting your time. They actually listen to you. So, you know, I think that I did ride, even though most of these guys now never probably seen me ride, but now that I have weekends, I've been riding again. So maybe now they'll see me, but yeah, really being a rider, being able to see it, you know, and it's all how you say it too, right? If you say it jerky, they're not going to listen. So you have to say it in a way that they're willing to listen. But yeah, I mean, you don't always get to work with who you want either. And even when I was a manager, I didn't always get to pick the guys that I wanted. You try, but they might go somewhere else or whatever. But yeah, really just trying to get the guy that'll listen and that you feel like you can help is when it's what I look for.
As you mentioned, you ended up becoming a team manager and running numerous organizations. How different of a transition was that for you, and how did that come about?
Well, I was at Kawasaki for almost 12 years, and yeah, worked for a lot of good riders there. I mean, Emig and Dowd, Carmichael on doing some test stuff, and then Stewart. So Stewart was 6.5 of the years. So that was a good learning experience for me for sure. And it was. I thought the manager role was going to be in some ways easier than it was, because I thought the mechanic job was the hard job, but really every job at every level, there's different things than you think, and no one has an easy job.
Yeah.
So it's just different things. And the thing that's tough about a management role is trying to plan out the future. That's the part. As a mechanic, you only focus on what you have to do today, and when that's done, you can move on. Where that with a manager, that doesn't happen. You're always planning so far out that you're never done. So that was a lot different than I expected.
Yeah. As a management position and/or as a mechanic, are you as much a psychologist as you were good at spinning the wrenches or planning that future? Because I mean, you got to get inside the head of that rider and figure out how to motivate them, don't you?
Yeah, and I would say more as a mechanic, that worked better for me. You have a closer relationship, rider mechanic. Really, you get a lot closer because you're like the middle person between the team manager, like myself, like I was recently. So really, like, they more look at the boss kind of more, I would say, not enemy, but not really the person that they want to tell everything to, because that's the person that hires or fires them. So they kind of like try to hide more things from the managers. So some riders you get closer with than others, but really the mechanic's the one that has the day to day and really gets really close with the rider and knows everything about them. And really, like, even when I worked for Stewart, like I would tell my manager at the time, Bruce Sternstrom, most of the time, I would tell him most of what Stewart said, but you don't want to tell them everything, because you're trying to have a balance of not making the manager mad, or not ratting out your rider that you're working for. So you definitely are the middle person to say it in a nicer way than the rider says it. And so I tried to I always told my mechanics, your job is to say yes. My job, if it's a no, I'm the one that says no. You should never say no, because you don't need to be the bad guy. So whatever they want you to do, you say, let me ask. I will do it if it's up to me. And that seems to help, because really they do want to do everything for their rider, and not always can we as a team. So
one thing about being a mechanic in any form of motorsport, each genre of racing has its own challenges when it comes to the work environment. In the NHRA, for example, those pieces and parts extremely hot, being changed in between every round. With moto, whether it's supercross or motocross, the work environment, the conditions are not always the best. If it's motocross, you're out in the middle of a field somewhere. If it's supercross, you're in a parking lot working under a bit of a tent. And if it's cold and snowy, you're stuck, right? So how did you deal with the challenges of just the environment itself? Because it's really a lot of times one mechanic per bike.
yeah, it's always, yeah, you have a little bit of help on the team. Like if you need to change a motor, usually whoever's your engine tuner would help on the other side. So you have a guy on each side of the bike to do it fast. If you had time, you would do it all on your own, but kind of depends on how much time you have. But really, most mechanics just take care of their own bike. So really on weather, the worst is the mud races, because those are the ones, trying to wash the bike, get it clean enough to be able to tear it down. When I was a manager, actually Coy and I both at Budds Creek, we blew some motors up. We made the race at least, but they were blowing up. So it was the one actually Barsha won. So we had to change a motor on two motors we had to change. So I helped on one side and Coy actually was on the other. So you never know who's going to help depending on how much time you have. But mud races are the worst, and that's why we had to jump in at Budds Creek that time. But usually Supercross is definitely easier than outdoor because unless it happens in an LCQ or something where you don't have much time. But really, it's really being organized, having stuff set aside, being ready. You have bars prepped, you have subframe set, you have an engine sitting there, you have clutches out. You pretty much have everything if you need it. So just being prepared really makes it easier. And if it's cold, you would try to have a tent, like you said, and we'd put the sides up and put a heater in there to make it a little bit better. And, we're used to working out of those trucks also. We have them set up really good. So, really the trucks are nicer than working in the shop most of the time.
And then a lot of the times you wouldn't come back. The guys would stay over and prep the bikes at the venue wherever you are before they would leave.
Yeah, we would do that. Yeah, even sometimes, to stay the next day, do the bike and then fly home, and then it's done. So you can fly the next race later than before. But yeah, some teams do it a little different. They'll fly in early and prep in the parking lot, like you said, before the race, which isn't as good. It's nicer when the tent's all up and you have a little more room. So, yeah.
Well, of course, I can't have you on the show without talking about Fresno Smooth. I know you knew it was coming. Classic cult movie for those that are moto aficionados. What do you remember about being a part of that?
I didn't know much about it at first. Emig was riding for Shift. It was kind of an edgy brand. He's like, hey, let's be in this movie. I'm like, all right. And then I think they were writing it as we were doing it. So there was no real story plot line, except for that there was a freestyle contest in Fresno. And every time we filmed it, it definitely got a little more edgy and a little funnier to some. I definitely, by the end of it, thought I was probably going to get fired over that movie, but I probably wouldn't have done it if they did tell me up front. So it's good they didn't.
That was a classic era. As you mentioned, you were all a part of that Southern California scene. It's a legendary time period in the moto world. What do you remember about what it was like to be engrossed in it?
It honestly felt like that's how it was every day. Like it didn't seem like, looking at it now, it was ahead of its time for sure. It was a little edgy, which I think the motocross world and all of that, social media, all of it would be more probably, I think it would work now. Back then, I think right before the movie came out, people found out that Fox owned Shift. So I think they were afraid to put it out because that was going to be like their edgy line that was going to compete against LBZ at the time. That was like a baggy freestyle type company. Yeah. So, they were just trying to have a race brand and an edgy brand. And I think they got nervous and didn't put it out. And then the reason it's kind of like a little cult film is I think it got released a little bit and then they sold the rights and then it got held up in some court and then it got re-released like years way later. And yeah, it never really got out there, which is okay for me. It probably would have changed my career path. I don't know, good or bad, but some people love it and some people hate it. It's kind of mixed. I mean, my kids don't watch the movie, so they'll tell you they're getting close now. They're old enough, maybe they could watch it, but definitely a little edgy.
Yeah, they're definitely going to look dad. They're going to look at dad a little different when they see it.
Yeah, like it's not like all proud dad moment there, but if you look at it as like any movie as entertainment, it's entertainment. Is it great for the sport? I wouldn't say it's great for the sport, but it is funny. It's entertaining. If you see the people that are in the movie, it has Tony Alva and Tony Hawk and all those guys talking about rollerblading. Like there's jokes all through the movie that are really funny. If you look at it like that, it's definitely a B-type movie, but we had fun making it. It was fun. I had a good time.
Oh, it's a classic, that is for sure. And now, based on the pictures we see behind you, you're working at Joe Gibbs Racing. Of course, you were running the Motocross Supercross team over there when it was in existence. But now tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Gibbs Racing these days.
Yeah, right now. So, I did run the motocross team the whole time. We were shutting it down. Didn't really know where I was going to fit. So Coy let me come over here. I have been trying to help on some business to business type stuff with our companies that working with other partners, FedEx, Interstate, just trying to do things there. And then we have a machine shop that we just broke off to kind of do its own own thing. So it's called Joe Gibbs Manufacturing Solutions. So I'm kind of the business development on that side, kind of like the sales type guy to connect some people. So we got, quite a few jobs coming, and it's looking like it's going to be a great business. So it's fun. And then, I'm actually going to go to some supercrosses also and help the AMA, be like a rider team liaison that's new, that I just bought my first floor flights for the first 4 races. So I'm not totally done going to the races yet either. It's been weird to not go when I've done it for so long, but I like having the weekends too. So it's been a hard, decision. Should I go do that AMA job? Took a few off so I could take my kids racing, because they have motorcycles still. So just trying to balance it all, hanging out with my kids, my wife, do a good job here at work, and then, see what else happens.
Well, those boys keep going as fast as they're getting. You're going to be going to the races a lot more. Don't forget, if you want to get to the top step of the podium, you got to have the right guy spinning the wrenches for you. Got to find yourself a Jeremy Albrecht. And if you want to know what racing in the moto world was all about in the 90s, check out Fresno Smooth. I think you'll get a good laugh out of it. J-Bone, it's great seeing you, buddy. Hope to see you at the races soon.
Yep, thank you.
All right, everybody. I'm Ralph Sheheen. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of the Geico 15-Minute Moto Show. We'll have another one for you right here on Speed Sport next week.